With Halloween just around the corner, I've been in kind of a spooky mood. And what better way to close out the year than to start working on a spooky first-person shooter with a little bit of weird physics thrown into the mix. When I started making this game, I wasn't 100% sure what the game was going to be about. My first incorrect instinct was to make a multiplayer game in the style of Left 4 Dead, where you and 3 other players would fight off waves of monsters who were trying to destroy your hometown. And so I started messing around with the level prototyping tools in Godot, my game engine of choice, to make a sandbox level where I could test out a bunch of different ideas. When I started, I had more of an urban setting in mind, which explains all the right angles and straight lines, but that's probably going to change in the future, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, I quickly threw together a very wonderfully bean-shaped first-person character controller with some basic first-person movement programmed in so that I could move around inside of this new world, and so far, so good. The next thing I needed to do was get some basic shooting into the game. For the prototyping phase, I quickly made a mock-up pistol, and I programmed in a simple hit-scan weapon system that could shoot and kill enemies. Initially, because realism, I wanted every weapon in the game to fire real projectiles that travel through the air in real time. I just thought it would be so much cooler than hit-scan weapons where bullets travel through the air instantly and you're basically using math to figure out if you hit something, but unfortunately, I was having a lot of trouble getting the projectiles to work reliably, so I decided to make the switch over to hit-scan, which is much easier to work with. I might still add a few projectile weapons later on, but for now we're keeping it simple. Next, even though these were just prototype enemies, I wanted to give them some cute little eyes so that I could tell which direction they were facing. And then I started working on giving them some AI so that they don't just stand around doing nothing. For the most basic enemy type, I just made it so that they chase after you if you get too close to them. The initial idea going in was to make enemies that would either attack the players or the buildings around them. And so the way these enemies work is that they will first prioritize attacking buildings unless there are player control characters nearby, in which case they'll stop what they're doing and chase after the player. Since the game is no longer about defending a city, this is not really all that useful, but I think I'll keep it around just in case for now. Another thing I did that isn't very useful anymore is the ability to create walls and other obstacles that could slow enemies down. Originally, I thought about adding some RPG style progression to the game by allowing players to expand by building barriers, upgrading weapons, and adding things like turrets to help fight off enemies as they became more and more dangerous. But then I realized that I'm terrible at making games, and this was a little bit beyond my ability.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that.
And besides, my vision for what the game should be was starting to change, and so I scrapped all of it and started working in this new direction. The next idea I had, which, spoiler alert, I ended up having to change as well, is actually inspired by an idea I had for a different game. For this version of the game, the player has a hunger meter that is constantly decreasing, and if it depletes completely, the player starts losing health until they die. This is similar to how hunger works in Minecraft. In order to avoid starving to death, the player has to kill enemies and eat their flesh in order to refill the hunger meter. Eating flesh would also give you some health back, and the idea behind all of it was to encourage players to move fast and be aggressive about killing enemies instead of hiding behind cover or sitting around waiting for your health to regenerate. It's very similar to how games in the Doom franchise work, where you have to actively seek out ammo and health in order to progress. And so as an homage to Doom, I decided to create a double-barrel shotgun as one of the main weapons you'll be using in this game. I quickly modeled a rough-looking shotgun in Blender, it's just a prototype mind you, and then I imported it into Godot and began working on firing animations and adding little extra movements to make it feel like there's an actual person behind the gun. I was really excited for this new direction for the game, and I even went so far as to have the enemies explode into little edible flesh chunks when they died, but then disaster struck, and I became aware of a first-person shooter that another game dev YouTuber was working on that was thematically and aesthetically very similar to what I had in mind. It even had eating the flesh of dead enemies to regain health as one of its core game mechanics. And quite frankly, it was done way better than what I could have accomplished, and so out of respect, I decided I would scrap the flesh-eating idea and come up with another idea for my game. The problem was that I didn't have any more ideas. Eating flesh was supposed to be the end game, but now that that was gone, I wasn't sure what to do. Well, while I was agonizing about what to do, I decided to have a little bit of fun and add a little feature to the game where when you shoot at an enemy, the force of the blast yeets them away with a considerable amount of force. I did it mostly for the meme, but as I was playing around with it, I realized that launching bad guys into orbit was actually really fun. And then it hit me. This is what the game should be about. I should make a game where one of the best ways to kill an enemy is to smack him in the face with one of his friends. And with that, I suddenly had a reason to work on this game again. The first thing I did was make it so that if you yeet a bad guy into another bad guy, it would deal a lot of damage to the guy getting hit. And just like before, if they died, they would explode into a bunch of flesh chunks, no longer edible of course. The next thing I did was make it so that the enemy would get splattered if they hit a wall, since it only seemed natural that they would. There were a couple issues with getting this to work, but eventually I was able to iron out the problems and make everything functional. Of course, I'll have to adjust a lot of things before it's perfect, but right now I'm just glad it doesn't crash the game anymore. The idea is that each weapon in the game will have its own unique properties and unique ways of launching enemies so that you can get more creative with how you kill bad guys. Not sure how I'm gonna do that just yet, but I'm sure we'll find out. The last thing I did was upgrade the shotgun model so that it doesn't look so Minecrafty, and I created a simple scene with textures and somewhat proper lighting so that I could better understand how I want the game to look. Check it out. Of course, all of this is going to evolve as I continue working on this game, and this is only a fraction of what I hope to eventually put in the full game, but I hope you enjoyed having a look at what I've been working on when I'm not making tutorial videos. This game has some wacky physics going on, and that means there's all sorts of possibilities for other wacky physics in this game, and so in the next game development video, I want to talk more about that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, bell, links to my Discord and Twitter down below, and as always, have a nice day.